All right, and I think that is it for our announcements. So with that, then we will kick it over to Matt to talk about Connect Illinois and eliminating the digital divide through an equity lens.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you tonight. And I just love the energy that you guys bring to this conversation. And as folks know me, I love to talk broadband. And so I really welcome the chance to join you here tonight and to share what we've been up to with Connect Illinois. And so Connect Illinois has been around for about a year and a half. We started in the fall of 2019, and it came on the heels of a historic investment in Illinois. Made by Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly. $420 million were included in the governor's Rebuild Illinois plan back in 2019. And so if you don't pick up on this yet, you will over the course of the next hour or so. I'm a native Minnesotan, and so that accent's going to come out. And I've been working in broadband for about 15 years now, as an academic researcher at the University of Minnesota, as a consultant, as a former state legislator. And in Minnesota, we created our own Office of Broadband and matching grant program, very similar to what we have here in Illinois today. And for years, I was preaching, you got to fund the fund, you got to put some real money behind the effort of state broadband investment. And unfortunately, my home state never really did, but what we've seen in Illinois is truly historic. And so in the summer of 2019, the governor came calling, looking to start this Office of Broadband. And I got to tell you, the temptation was real. And so my two daughters and my wife and I, one wasn't born yet, the daughter, but we all moved down to Illinois, and we've set up the Office of Broadband and really enjoyed being part of the community and the state. And the time since has been about putting together the best possible investment in broadband that we can through our Connect Illinois Broadband grant program, and also rounding out our investment in related programming. And so tonight, what I'm going to do is share with you what we've been up to over the course of the last year and a half, how we take a holistic approach to the question of broadband, and how we look at everything we do under the lens of digital equity. Truly, broadband investment and the related programming, it's all about equity, in filling gaps, targeting resources, and programming to areas that need it. And so hopefully this is interesting. I bring to light some of this tech talk and this investment. I would always say interject with any comments or questions, but I know that you'll be saving them for the end. And so what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about our vision, our state strategic plan with Connect Illinois that guides our investments, our programming, a word or two on mapping and the pitfalls and the shortcomings thereof. We'll get into the details a little bit about our programming. And then we'll talk a little bit about an affordability study that our Broadband Advisory Council did, and I think the implications for Illinois moving forward. And so moving along here, before we jump into this, a word about our vision. I like to use the analogy of the three-legged stool, so forgive me, but the three legs of our vision here for Connect Illinois. First leg, access, making sure that we've got the infrastructure in place so that homes, businesses, community anchor institutions around the state have access to broadband. Secondly, promoting adoption and digital literacy, trying to help households and others subscribe to broadband services and take part in the digital economy. And the third leg of that stool is utilization and making sure our homes, businesses, our communities around the state are doing everything that they can to fully utilize the internet and put our homes and our communities in a place to compete in the 21st century. So that three-legged stool, access, adoption, and use, if you will. And so that's our broader vision, how we think holistically about this undertaking. Now, I always like to direct folks to our Connect Illinois website. We think it's a little clunky, I get it, but there's a lot of good information on here. And if you want to learn what we've been up to with our program, this is the place to go. And so we've got our notices of funding opportunity up here for our big infrastructure grant program. Also, we've got our related digital equity programming and a lot of other really interesting stuff, at least from my standpoint. You get into the maps, you get into a newsletter. If you want to sign up for that here, you can scroll down here on this column. What I want to spend a moment talking about, though, is our strategic plan and just how the intentionality that went into kind of articulating our vision in a document is really kind of sussed out here and played out in what we do. And so if you click on that strategic plan document, hey, voila, this opens up Connect Illinois Broadband Strategic Plan. You can see this is dated February 2020. The world has kind of changed in the 12 months or so since then, but we think a lot of the goals and the approach that we articulated in this strategic plan a year ago remain true today. And so first of all, some basic definitions about broadband. What is it? There's a whole lot of different ways of looking at what is and what is not broadband. What we've decided to do is index our technical definition for what is broadband to the definition that the Federal Communications Commission uses for a couple of reasons. One, we want to demonstrate our interest in having strong partnership between state and federal agencies in our work on broadband. Also, we thought it would be important for us to be speaking the same language, so to speak, with our federal partners and others. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think that this definition needs to change, particularly in light of COVID-19, where upload speeds are incredibly important, just as important as download speeds in many regards. And so the Federal Communications definition of broadband in terms of speed is 25 megabits per second down, 3 megabits per second up. We've indexed our definition of speed accordingly. And so if the FCC makes some adjustments to this definition, hopefully in the coming year, ours is indexed to that to change accordingly. And we look at it not just as a number, but also the importance of affordability and quality and reliability in that broadband service. And so it's not just a number, it's about what you get at that service level. So in terms of definitions, we've got a couple of definitions. Unserved areas in Illinois are areas that fall beneath that 25 by 3 level. And so this is a pretty basic threshold. It really is. And this was true a year ago and is definitely true today. But that is basic broadband, 25 by 3. And then we have a secondary definition, underserved areas that meet that threshold, but still are eligible for all of our grant programming. And those are areas that fall below the 100 by 20 threshold. And I think a lot of folks will be saying, hey, we should be investing in gigabit fiber, or we should be making sure that we'll position our communities to succeed in the years ahead. Really important stuff. The point that I would emphasize here is that all investments that we make in Illinois with our Connect Illinois grant dollars have to be in fully scalable infrastructure. So 100 by 100, which is 100 megabits per second down, 100 megabits per second up, which essentially means you could go to gig or 10 gig symmetrical service. The point is everything we invest in is for the future-proof technology. Yeah.
Matt Schmidt, are you intending to be sharing slides at the moment?
I thought I had been, so I'm glad that you interjected here. I'm advancing these slides as I go along here and seeing them. Okay. Oh man.
We'll wait for those to just get up. But it was very engaging still.
I didn't put anybody to sleep yet?
No, absolutely not. Everyone's riveted.
All right, that's good. Remember at the front end when we talked about, hey, should we plan for a technical difficulty and I send you my slides ahead of time?
Nah.
All right, here we go. Share slides. And believe it or not, this is not the first time that I've done this. All right, you guys. All right, I can see it on both screens here.
Fantastic. All right.
Look at this. All right. Mid-course correction. We are nimble. All right. So you've only missed a few slides here. Not a big deal from my standpoint. There is that three-legged stool. Here's our Connect Illinois website. Here is our state broadband strategic plan. And then here's a little page about our definitions. And so I think that's a great excuse to go to the next slide. And so when we look at these, goals that we've set for ourselves, this is a year ago, we want ubiquitous service around the state. All homes, businesses, community anchor institutions have access to basic service of at least 25 by 3. I have to tell you, folks, there are places in the state that don't even have that basic broadband threshold. And so when we talked about setting goals, we thought, do we want aspirational goals or do we want goals that if we push ourselves, we can meet them? And we really believe that if we leverage federal dollars to the fullest and use our state funding wisely, that by 2024, every home, business, community anchor institution, like schools, hospitals, libraries, will have access to basic broadband. The point, though, is we don't want to settle for the bare minimum. We want to push ourselves. And so that means as we go out and partner with communities and broadband providers, investing in that symmetrical, capable service, by 2028, we want to at least get to 100 by 20. And I have to tell you, I think I'm hopeful that with additional federal dollars coming down the pike this year and in the years to come, that we'll be able to shoot past those goals. That's our intention. And so we wanted to set doable goals, but we also want to push ourselves to get the best possible service that we can in every corner of the state. And so we have a couple additional goals here. One is I guess a legacy goal, and that's not, and this is one that's really important here. I think just given, what's happening here with the pandemic and the investments we're seeing around the world in broadband, we don't want static goals that are just tied to numbers. Rather, we want to look at what other states, other markets, other countries are doing on the broadband front, how they're investing. And we want to place ourselves in the top 3 nationally, top 12 globally in terms of broadband access. And so this, in my mind, is the real important goal, because it recognizes what others are doing, what the demands in the global economy are, and it pushes us to keep up with those. And so that legacy goal of broadband leadership, and then everything that we're doing, we really want to come back to, economic development, quality of life, pushing adoption of end uses like telehealth or remote learning or working from home. If you get out in rural areas, precision agriculture is an application that's got a cascade of benefits for increased yields and also lower water or nutrient consumption, which is good for the environment. And so we just see a lot of benefits here of pushing ourselves on this front. So now, in addition to that infrastructure component of Connect Illinois, our broadband strategic plan also speaks to digital equity and inclusion. And so I'm not going to read through this, but I'll just tell you, if you're interested in learning about how we think about this, the strategic plan's a place to start. But also, you can look at the programming that we're putting in place, and we've got some slides for that later on here. And in addition, we also value the investment in community planning and capacity building. And this was true before the pandemic. It's certainly true now. Communities around the state, around the country, recognize that they've got to be savvy on the broadband front, that they've got to be building their own capacity and putting their community in a position to succeed in the 21st century. But not all communities are in the same point. A community may have a real entrepreneurial mayor or a council member or just a community champion that wants to push the community in new and meaningful ways on the broadband front. But not all communities have that. And so we've created some programming to develop that capacity at the local level. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in a little while. And so I told you that we would talk a little bit about mapping. And so you look at this map in front of you here. This is our current mapping. It's based on Federal Communications Commission data collected from broadband providers. And I have to tell you, this data, we're really welcome to have, or glad to have mapping of any kind, but this is really, really flawed. And so we're not going to zoom in on this tonight, but I mean, if you zoomed in the northeast portion of the state in Chicagoland, you would see a lot of areas in dark blue here that suggest, hey, you're covered. You got 100 by 20 service. You're good. We recognize that there are pockets, certainly in rural Illinois, but also in urban areas where that level of service, that threshold of 100 by 20, just isn't being met. And so if you look at this map, the lighter blue areas are those areas that we call underserved areas between 25 by 3 and 100 by 20. You didn't get to really see the slide that said this, but there was a slide that said, hey, what's unserved, what's underserved. Those light blue areas are those underserved areas. And then the green areas are the areas that don't even have basic broadband at that 25 by 3 level. And so this data is flawed. It probably overstates service, believe it or not. And so if you look at this map and you're going to say, wow, Illinois, you got your work cut out for you. You got a lot of rural areas around the state that don't even have basic broadband. But if you zoom in, you're going to recognize there are a lot of areas of relative population density that lack broadband service too. And I have to tell you, and I think we recognize this if you've looked at these maps, they don't take the whole equation into account. And so what we're doing in Illinois is we've worked with a private mapping vendor, and within the next month or so, we're going to have our own maps at our disposal that will kind of triangulate to get the best snapshot of where broadband is and where it isn't. The maps are going to include provider offered data, similar to the Form 477 data from the FCC here, but we're also going to do some field testing to verify actual speeds that are available in certain parts of the state. And then we're also going to integrate a speed test web app data set. Basically, folks at home can take a speed test, and the results of that speed test are going to feed in to essentially a data set that we can create a mapping layer off of. And that's about as technical as I'm going to talk tonight. But the point here is we're going to be able to triangulate and look at what the providers are telling us, look at what our field testing is telling us, and look at what consumers at home, folks just taking the speed test, are telling us about broadband. And that should give us a more, I think, realistic and well-rounded view of where broadband is and isn't. And that's going to help us target our resources accordingly. We could spend an hour talking about mapping, and maybe after we get our state broadband mapping in another month or so, you wanna get into the weeds with me on mapping. But for right now, we'll leave it at this. We've got some mapping. It's flawed. It's a start of a conversation. It's not where we end the conversation on any of our programming. Okay, speaking of that programming, we already talked a little bit about that infrastructure grant program, the Connect Illinois Broadband Grant Program, the nation's largest matching grant program administered at the state level ever at $400 million, all devoted to matching grants. We also have this digital equity programming that we're really proud of. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about these 4 parts of that digital equity package. And so first of all, this infrastructure grant program, we have $400 million available. We're in our second round of funding right now. We're doing this in tranches of $50 million to start with here. A grantee can get up to $5 million, but we had grants as low as like $50,000 in round 1. And so it really depends on the ambitious nature of the application, how much turf, how many new passings or households you're going to connect. And so we give a wide range. And we're willing to work with broadband providers, local communities, rural co-ops, nonprofit organizations, entities that have the chops to get the work done, and that can prove to us that they're going to do good work. And so we've got 4 categories. Broadband access. That's really focused on connecting the unconnected areas in rural Illinois. The green areas on the map in particular, or those light blue areas. Broadband innovation that does that, but also focuses on telehealth or remote learning or working from home uses. To highlight, we have urban broadband that's focused on areas in more population dense parts of the state. And then also broadband equity that recognizes that there are areas in Illinois that are really rural, where population sparsity is an issue, or areas where adoption rates are really low, maybe due to historic poverty or socioeconomic factors. And for areas in grant applications that apply in that digital equity category, we will relax our 50% non-state match requirement. And that's a piece that I haven't spent too much time talking about here tonight. But one of the driving principles of our matching grant program is to turn every dollar of state investment in broadband into at least $2 of total impact. And so that means we're asking our broadband applicants, whether they're providers or communities or any of the other entities I've mentioned, to match us 1-to-1. But in some parts of the state, that might not be realistic. And that's why we created this broadband equity category. And so we're really excited with round 2. We're accepting applications now through April 12th. And so more information about Connect Illinois Broadband Grant Program, the infrastructure grant program, is available on our website. Now, and here's a little bit of more information here, regarding our scoring criteria, anticipated broadband impact, that non-state match that we require in most cases, but not all. Community participation, we want to have the community voice articulated and strong in our applications that we receive. Project readiness, is this applicant ready to get to work and extend connectivity in short order? Do they have a history of doing good work? Project sustainability, are they in a position to ramp up and do good work as bandwidth needs increase over time? And so that really kind of speaks to that scalability piece. And then also a couple important points here: broadband adoption assistance, the extent to which our applicants are thinking about affordability and reaching out to customers to maximize or optimize adoption of broadband services. And so it's one thing to build the infrastructure, but you want Illinoisans to take part of it and to sign up and to benefit from that investment. And then the last piece here is open access and shared use. This is something that we value, we don't require, but we figure in this kind of infrastructure investment, it makes a lot of sense for us to share the asset where we can, whether it's through an open access or multiple technology deployments operating off of maybe shared fiber. And so the idea is, let's not be burying fiber on both sides of the street where we can avoid it. Let's try to be smart and ensure that asset. And so this is just a quick map of our round 1 of Connect Illinois and where the dollars went. You can see $50 million, leveraged $65 million in non-state match for $115 million in total investment, 26,000 new or improved connections around the state. Really proud that we had a application and a grantee from every region of the state. And here we have a middle mile infrastructure build in Cook County that you can see up in the northeast part of the state. And so moving on to our digital equity package, and I'll try to make up some time here, but this is really important stuff. And so I do want to spend a moment talking about it. So the digital navigator concept, imagine what a librarian does today, and this is before the pandemic, but a lot of our libraries are open today. Many patrons go to the library, not just for books, but to access computers, to access the internet. And because of that, our librarians are on the front lines of providing digital literacy programming, giving patrons kind of tips on how to use the internet. And so what we're trying to establish here with our digital navigator network is to locate organizations or communities that are willing to basically donate some of their employees' time on a regular basis to going through digital navigator training, and also continuing to be a resource for community members moving forward, so that not all calls have to go to the Office of Broadband in Chicago or in Springfield, but rather we have an increasingly robust network of resources that are local in nature, that know, hey, who are my broadband providers? Where are the low cost or affordable or subsidized broadband service plans that are out there? What other kinds of digital literacy programming is available for me at the local level? And so we're investing in this. It's kind of a train the trainer model where we want to develop a cohort of digital navigators and build off of that, maintain those skills so that they're able to make a difference in their communities around the state. And so we'll be accepting applications more or less on a rolling basis, but we will send deadlines, every month or two. And so our next deadline coming up here, March 15th. If folks have any questions about this program, would welcome any inquiries to broadband@illinois.gov. And sorry, I don't have that plastered all over these slides. I think it's at the end, but broadband@illinois.gov is a great way to get in touch with us regarding any of our programming or questions you may have. Our Illinois Connected Communities program is one that I'm really, stoked about. We are kind of halfway through round one, and the whole idea here is to invest in community planning and capacity building, helping communities, better understand where they are in terms of putting together a broadband vision and acting on that vision. So maybe that's leveraging resources. Could be a Connect Illinois infrastructure grant application, or it could be some work in adoption or broadband use, like for telehealth or remote learning. And so the real value proposition here is, yeah, we'll give you up to $15,000 in a state grant, but the real value, 50 hours of consultant facilitator time for each community and access to best practice curriculum that's been perfected over the last 10 years of this kind of programming offered in other parts of the country. And so I'm really high on this because I think it helps level the playing fields between communities that kind of know where they're at and how they want to get to where they want to go versus those that know they've got to be savvier but just don't know how to get the conversation started. And so this whole program is made possible through a strategic partnership that our Office of Broadband has with the Evanston-based Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, just based up the road in Evanston, and also some local philanthropic support. And so, again, this is a program where every dollar of state grants has essentially been matched by the philanthropic community. And so our next application deadline is coming up here, March 8th. We really encourage neighborhoods or villages, towns, communities around counties around the state to look hard at this because there's a lot of value in helping, improve your local capacity. And so the next piece here, our Broadband Ready Grant program. This is one that is more regional in scale. READY stands for Regional Engagement for Adoption and Digital Equity. And what we're trying to do here is have a partner in every region of the state. So we've got 10 economic development regions in the state. We want to have a partner in every one of the regions of the state that's willing to help us do some baseline measurement of where we're at in terms of broadband access, adoption, affordability, and use. So kind of identify best practices, but also use this effort to integrate some of our programming with digital navigators or our computer refurbishing network that we'll speak to in a little while here. And the idea here is to complement that broadband mapping that I mentioned earlier, the good mapping that'll be coming online here in the next month or so, with a deeper understanding, kind of a dashboarding of where the state of Illinois is on a regional basis on a number of other important metrics. And so this program's just getting started right now. We'll probably have a couple initial cohorts to get a partner in each region of the state. And then it's something we'd like to track over time. And I had a grad prof back in grad school who said, Matt, what gets measured gets done. And so we're really serious about that. If you're not measuring where you are today in comparing that against the goals that you set for yourself, how can you possibly target resources? And so it doesn't sound super interesting, but I got to tell you, this is something that I'm really passionate about. And as an added bonus, we're able to provide some funding for each of these regional partners to invest in immediate access expansion, whether it's through some public computing or hotspots or public Wi-Fi. And so we're really, really stoked about kind of the balance between immediate access expansion and also the longer term view of measuring where we are and where we want to go on the digital equity front. So this is a map. Sorry, this slide was supposed to be one back. But this is where our Illinois Connected Communities grants ended up from round one. We have that round two window open right now. But as you can see here, there's a great mix of neighborhoods in the Chicago area. We have a couple of counties, we have a housing authority, we have a whole region in the southwest part of the state. And so this is a map that belongs to the Illinois Connected Communities discussion, but wanted to share this with you today. Again, this is a great complementary layer to what we're doing with our infrastructure investment and other work. And so I do promise we are winding down in slides here, and so I can't wait to get into the Q&A here. But just a moment on a resource that we have on our website. And this just gives me pause a little bit because this is just the reality that we face right now. In the pandemic, a lot of Illinoisans, their best hope for broadband is finding the Wi-Fi hotspot that's available to them in their community, that's open to the public. And I think this really speaks to, the reality for many Illinoisans. And I think the challenge that we have in making sure that we can expand broadband access, infrastructure, and affordability to all homes, businesses, and community anchor institutions throughout the state. And so this map is available on our website, and you can zoom in, and there's many more options in the Chicagoland area or other metropolitan areas that might appear on this map. But this is a resource for folks right now. And again, it gives me pause because this isn't ideal that a lot of Illinoisans have to rely upon public Wi-Fi to connect with the to connect with the internet. But it's a resource that we got. We're going to keep developing this and doing what we can to make sure there are more hotspots identified on this map, and at the same time making smart investments in expanding broadband for homes, businesses, and community anchor institutions around the state. And so this, I think, is my last slide here. This is our Computer Equity Network. I could have had a whole deck regarding this, but this is a really cool undertaking that we're really proud of. Back in September, a nonprofit organization called PCs for People received a grant from the Illinois COVID-19 Response Fund, allowing them to set up essentially a beachhead in Metro East. Cleo says hi, my little daughter's on the other side of that door. And they're setting up a retail warehouse space in the Metro East region, and they're operating essentially a 40-county semi-statewide computer refurbishing network, where they source used computers and completely wipe them, update them with software so they're perfectly good computers for households, and they redistribute them on an equitable basis. And this is a partnership with the Urban League of St. Louis, as well as the Girl Scouts of Illinois, PCs for People, as well as the philanthropic support of the COVID-19 Response Fund. Well, we also were able to identify some additional seed funding to get this effort up and running in the Chicago Southlands, Cook County. And so due in part to a generous grant from the Jewish United Foundation of Metropolitan Chicago, they've set up a second location in the Chicago Southland, a retail warehouse space, and we have a full statewide network for taking in used computers, refurbishing them, and redistributing them on an equitable basis to families in need. And so when you look at the digital divide, here's another three-legged stool for you. You've got one leg that really focuses on access and infrastructure, having that connectivity to the internet. And you can understand we've got a lot of work to do, but we're ahead of the game with regards to where a lot of other states are. And so we're really happy with, I think, the promise of the work in front of us. Secondly, you have to have a computing device. And we know through the American Community Survey from 2019, so basically the census, that over 1 million Illinois households don't have computers, whether it's a desktop or a laptop. And so that's another big aspect of the digital divide that we want to do something about. That's what this program is designed to do, is to kind of plug away and put computers in the hands of households in need. And then finally, that third leg of the digital equity stool is skills and digital literacy. And we've really leaned into that Digital Navigator program, trying to build skills where we can. And so with that said, you can see whether it's infrastructure, whether it's computer devices, whether it's digital literacy programming, everything that we're trying to do is address a fundamental equity challenge that underlies the digital divide here in Illinois. And after about a year and a half with our Office of Broadband, we're expanding partnerships and programming, and we feel like we're in a good spot right now to continue to do meaningful work. But this truly is the broadband moment, and we're looking strongly to our federal partners to invest boldly and wisely in broadband, and to forge strong partnerships with our state partners. Because with the Office of Broadband in Illinois, we have resources, but if we're able to partner in a constructive way with federal agencies on this, we really think that we can eliminate the digital divide once and for all in Illinois and around the country. And so with that said, I have a couple more slides here. This is dealing with our Illinois Broadband Advisory Council. You can see that they are fairly well representative of the provider community, as well as agencies and state government, and also various stakeholder groups. Meets quarterly. We have working groups that help guide our work. And one of the important things that the General Assembly asked us to do this past year was to undertake an affordability study to get a better understanding of where we are in terms of affordability and how much it would cost the state of Illinois to provide free or affordable broadband service around the state. And so this is working towards our last slide. Some of those questions that they asked us to undertake identified herein. You can see a link to the affordability study on our website. And if you click on that, it will take you to a couple of the findings. First, we have a sizable homework gap in Illinois. Over 285,000 households with school-age children lack internet access. And so we've got some great approaches, including Chicago Connected, and also the work that CARES Act dollars and others are doing to try to eliminate that homework gap. We also have a lack of home computers. We talked about that. Over 1 million households don't have computers. And finally, the affordability study also did tell us, hey, that investment that we're making in Connect Illinois, that $400 million, that's on par with the need. And so if you look at that affordability study, you can get into a whole host of cost estimates regarding what it might cost to provide free or reduced cost broadband around the state, including to subsets of the population, including those in poverty. There's some real doable things there. And so we're really proud of that work and hope it's the start of another conversation. And so with that said, all right, appreciate the chance to join you today, and I certainly welcome any questions folks have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation. We do have some questions from the audience.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, so here's a question. Does Connect Illinois plan to increase fiber connectivity throughout the city and the state?
So that's a great question, and I'll try to be pretty efficient with these. Certainly ask any follow-ups if you want to get into the details. But if you look at what Connect Illinois is set up to do, we're trying to inspire applications from communities, from broadband providers, from partnerships. And so we don't have a master plan saying, hey, this is the one-size-fits-all approach and the right thing for your community. Rather, we're trying to kind of set the rules of the road in terms of how to participate in our grant program and inspire communities to find a way to come to us and partner with the state to build out broadband in their area. And I'll emphasize, I think to do this right, a lot of times it takes partnerships, and there's partnerships that can be community-led. There are partnerships that can be provider-led. We're really interested in partnering with applicants to invest in broadband expansion. And so the answer in short, yes, but we want your ideas. We're not going to come to you with what we think you should do.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have another one here. So have Connect Illinois considered implementing open access networks similar to Utopia Fiber in Utah?
Yeah, that's something that we really value, and it was in our scoring criteria that I kind of breezed through earlier. We recognize that that's not realistic in all areas. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a program that's going to respond to kind of the market of what we hear from applicants. And so if a community comes to us and says, hey, we've got our broadband provider identified, we'd like to invest in an open access network that is of benefit to other providers in the area, public or private, we think that that's, in theory, a great model. And I'll just point to our Illinois Century Network, which is over 2,100 miles of fiber network around the state that connects our education institutions. I really have very little to do with that. This was here before I came on the scene. But it allows for last mile broadband service from over 50 broadband providers. And so we've got a great example of that kind of open access approach that has worked in Illinois. And where we can, we want to try to emphasize that with our Connect Illinois investments too.
Awesome. Another question. Is Connect Illinois part of the mapping grant that went to the University of Chicago to map the digital divide?
No, it's not formally, but we're really interested in the work that Chicago and Chicago Public Schools and the University of Chicago are doing with the Chicago Connected program. And so increasingly, we're having a lot of crossover in terms of our programming and our investments, and it's something that we'd like to integrate where we can, or certainly be a part of.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question here. So what plans are in place to work with entities already doing the work of digital inclusion?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I think that this is something that I'm really serious about. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to start something new when there's something already in existence that's working well. And so whether it's our computer equity network that's designed to be, inclusive of effort that's already underway at the local level, or if it's digital equity programming that can play off of existing effort, we want to identify what's working. And in some cases, it might be a matter of scaling it up and giving them more, finding new resources to do more meaningful work, or maybe replicating it in other parts of the state. And that's why I said earlier that I think what happens at the federal level is really important, because in Illinois, we've got a lot of funding that's devoted to capital that we think is absolutely important as to what we need to do to build up these networks. But we're looking for philanthropic partners, and we're looking for the federal government to provide some resources for us to do more important work in the digital equity space. And so we're trying to get a handle on some of the programs that were created in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, basically the latest COVID bill that was signed into law at the end of December. There's some really neat programming in there that we're waiting to hear the details on, that can help us with broadband adoption and making it more affordable, and also in working with various communities around the state to do digital equity programming. And so sorry, I don't mean to go on and on here, but I think that there's some real opportunity for partnership, and we're just looking for some details on those programs.
Awesome. I think you did touch on this a little bit in your talk. Here's a question related to the digital divide. So the question is, the digital divide also extends to older Americans. Is anything being done to teach these folks who otherwise have internet access how to use the internet? Yeah,
that is such an important question. And I have to tell you, so often, this portion of the population is overlooked. And I think with COVID-19, whether it's the isolation that distancing has created, or right now the very real challenges of just enrolling for vaccinations, which could be a life or death, kind of decision or undertaking. We want to do what we can to build skills. And so I point to that Digital Navigator program that I mentioned earlier. I think that that's a great program that if we're able to not only stand it up, but scale it up, could provide some great resourcing at the community level. And this can be in person after the pandemic, doing events at community centers or libraries or, retirement, centers, for instance, for various populations. And so that's just one example of the kind of programming that we think is really important. And I just have to compliment, I think, a number of our advocates in Illinois, whether it's the Department of Aging or it's AARP or others, that there are members of our Broadband Advisory Council that are really engaged in this, and we're trying to find partnerships where we can. But thank you for that question. I think that it's something that's often overlooked, and we want to get the most out of partnership in that area.
All right, thank you. So we have another question here from the audience. What is the position on net neutrality and data caps?
So I have to tell you, on net neutrality, I mean, we don't do everything in the policy realm right now with our Office of Broadband. I could tell you what I think, but we don't have an official position. With data caps, it's actually something that we put into our grant agreements for Connect Illinois. And so if we are spending taxpayer dollars investing in broadband network expansion, we're not interested in having data caps, essentially limit what users at home can get out of that investment. And so I think you look at a number of different kind of limiting factors or barriers to getting the most out of broadband. Affordability can be one piece, data caps can be another. Oftentimes they go hand in hand, because if you exceed that data cap, broadband that was affordable can become unaffordable. And so we really draw a pretty strong line with data caps.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
You have talked a little bit about how you're keen on partnering with the different groups. So here's a question related to that. I see a lot of national providers on the advisory council and a lot of government departments, but not on the ground user-oriented groups. Are there any plans to change that or to bring new people into that fold?
Yeah, that's a great kind of observation. And so the composition of the Broadband Advisory Council was created in statute, and so it could be changed in statute. I have no say over who's on the council and who's not, but that's one reason that we've established working groups, is that we'd like to, I think get out into the community more and have issue-specific conversations around different topics. And so the first kind of round, if you will, or cohort of working groups dealt with education and telehealth. We had a couple of technical groups dealing with, kind of like broadband access or technology. And then there was a fifth group that dealt with economic development. I think there's so many different conversations that we could start along a similar vein in kind of forming these informal working groups that advise the Broadband Advisory Council. And so that's something that I have to tell you, I'll just be honest, we kind of had this set up for last summer, and then the pandemic hit. And it's something that was kind of set on the back burner just because we had to focus, on the immediate needs of the pandemic and connectivity over remote learning or telehealth. But it's something that I really want to invest time and energy in, is developing those working groups, those policy conversations, and making this whole kind of Connect Illinois conversation that we're having in Illinois tied as closely as possible to the communities that we're trying to serve and benefit.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Of course. So we have another question here from the audience. Are there any mesh projects that are receiving state funding?
No, not yet. They could, though. And so and that's why I really say we want to try to put the Connect Illinois broadband program kind of in a position to inspire innovative thinking. We don't want to be overly limiting or instructive. I mean, we tell applicants a lot of things that they've got to do to apply. But on the flip side, we try to kind of cast a wide net in terms of the entities that can apply and the kinds of approaches that they can take. Really the one main kind of consideration here is we just want scalable infrastructure that's going to stand the test of time. We don't want to have to go back to the same place over and over again and say in 10 or 20 years, oh, geez, we missed this, or this is obsolete. No, we want to do this right now. And that's why, we're really serious about that scalability piece.
Great.
These are great questions, by the way. So thank you.
Great audience. Another question about connecting in the virtual realm. Is there a hashtag on Twitter where you encourage people to connect with you and share ideas or ask questions, or a group on Facebook or LinkedIn?
So I got to tell you, yes, we have a hashtag Connect Illinois. And so it's a fairly modest, I guess, undertaking. But hey, folks, if you've got stuff that you'd like to send our way, that's a great way of flagging it, because I usually check that out. We're most active on Twitter or LinkedIn, believe it or not. But I'd be happy to check out different platforms. And I know social media is a great opportunity for communicating. And so we'd like to do more of it. And so hashtag Connect Illinois.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So this next question actually kind of feeds off that one. So are there any plans to add student and youth voices to the Broadband Advisory Council?
No plans. I think it's a great idea. I think that there's a couple of opportunities here for having specific outreach or working groups that are focused on higher ed or for K-12, for instance. from my point of view, I think that the more voices that we have part of this conversation, whether formally or informally, the better off we're going to be. And so I welcome any feedback on this. It is, for better or worse, above my pay grade, who is formally on the Broadband Advisory Council, but that doesn't mean that we can't connect in the meantime, informally.
I hear a young voice. All right, we got one more question for you, I think. How does this Connect Illinois work and Office of Broadband relate to the Broadband Illinois Partnership for Connected Illinois work in the early 2010s? Is this an evolution, relaunch, or are there any notable successes or failures from that or other earlier efforts that has informed this Connect Illinois work?
Great question. And so you've seen kind of like two waves here in Illinois. And one was started with the ARA era, that investment and stimulus funding about a decade ago. And so that's where a partnership for a Connected Illinois came from, and had close connections to that Benton Institute that I mentioned in Evanston. And, there was a lot of energy in Illinois in previous administrations regarding taking advantage of ARA funding, investing state dollars. And so that partnership was really instrumental in both. But then there was a little bit of a quiet period in Illinois where you didn't see that kind of state investment. And the Partnership for a Connected Illinois kind of morphed into focusing on telehealth, which is really important. And so their work is almost predominantly telehealth related right now. And so they're out there, they have a similar sounding name. I talk to Nancy and her colleagues fairly regularly, Nancy Kazak, but they're completely different. But their roots started out is doing similar things to what Office of Broadband and Connect Illinois are doing right now. And so there's a deep and rich history there and story, but I give you the highlights there.
Awesome. Well, those are all the questions. And I want to thank you again for a great presentation and for showing up tonight and sharing what you're doing with HACKNIGHT.
Hey, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much. And little Cleo says hi.
Hi, Cleo. All right, so I think we're going to be moving into the post-presentation portion of the evening, and soon there'll be a slide up on the screen with the post Zoom link so that people will know where to go. Ah, there it is. Okay, sweet. It is there. And for attendees who want to stick around for the 3-word intros and breakout groups, aka the civic hacking, that is the Zoom to go to. You can find this broadcast on the YouTube channel in the coming days, in the next couple of days. And in the meantime, Helena and I both hope that you stay safe, take care, and go forth
and hack.
Thanks so much, Al.